And he
Yeah.
picked her up and yelled at her. And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. And it made me realize this is not going to work. This is not going
Yeah.
to work. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about this innocent little baby.
Yeah.
And so I told him, I said, you got to go. This ain't going to work. And he proceeded to pull a gun on me. And I don't know how I actually got out of that.
You did have a choice. You chose courage, is what you
Yeah.
chose. And
Yes.
that's
Yeah.
what I heard when you
Yeah.
first told
Exactly.
the story is
Yeah.
as you were describing it, I thought, okay, how was this for her is the question I ask myself a lot. Like at every event in my life has served me in some way. And what I took from that, and I'd love to hear your viewpoint, is how it was for you, is it caused you to step into a new level of courage. You walked through some big time fear and came out the other side a stronger person. Hi, welcome to Beauty from Ashes. I'm Kim. Just want to share a little bit about the podcast and what inspired it. What's our big why? So a couple of us, more than really, have come together and want to share the healing that we've experienced as far as letting go of the past and reframing the experiences that we've had into something that helps us grow and experience life in a way that feels pleasurable, to see ourselves as creators of our lives. And we recognize the value of sharing stories of overcoming that allow people to see that it's possible to shift your perspective. More and more of us are seeing ourselves as creators of our lives rather than victims of it. And it can be very helpful when you're in the midst of a situation to see that other people have overcome hardships as well and become better for it. So I invite you to, if it resonates, to share these videos with others who may benefit from recognizing the power of shifting your mindset and walking beyond the fear of a situation. If any of this appeals to you, please share and subscribe. And I hope you enjoy the episode and gain some positive meaning from it. Thanks for watching.
So welcome everyone to the podcast Beauty from Ashes. My name is David Lloyd, and these lovely people are all part of the Intersection Foundation, and we will kind of probably not talk much about that, but just more about stories. So I'm gonna go ahead and let Kim go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we will dive into Harmony's story, have you introduce yourself and kind of tell us your story. But first, Kim, tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're here. That will, just who you are anyway.
As you mentioned, part of the Intersection Foundation, and why I'm here is because I'm passionate about helping people recognize how to transform, transmute pain into beauty. Having had my own awakening story that very much involved that, and recognizing the value of those events and, rather than just the pain of them. So I'm excited about helping people to have opportunities to do that within their own lives.
Nice, very nice. Harmony, tell us first, I guess, a little bit who you are, and then we'll dive into your story, kind of
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
what
thank
made
you.
you.
I'm happy to be here and to be connected with this foundation and this larger mission of understanding that these challenges are part of the beauty, right? And of who we are, who we really are, and what we're really here for. And so yeah, I mean, that's I'm thrilled to be a part of this and to share my story, especially if it provides insights or relatability to someone else and hope, right?
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I think that's a lot about the reason, the purpose behind this really is just to get the stories told, is so that people can really understand. There's so many stories to be told, and so I'm looking forward to hearing yours and kind of now not just who you are, but what made you, and kind of a little bit of a path that you kind of walk down to become the wonderful person that I've now met, and very much appreciate your kind of journey and your spirit and who you are. So go ahead, tell us a little bit. Just start wherever the beginning is, I guess. Give us a
Yeah.
little bit of your story.
Okay. Well, it definitely feels like I've lived multiple lives already. There's been so many different chapters, and several transition points. The one that's really coming up right now for me is an experience that I had with the divine. And, I'd always been interested in paranormal activity, like learning about near-death experiences and people that have
Hmm.
had experiences like this. But I never really had anything like that myself, or at least I didn't think I had. But then I'll get back to that. I later remembered that I did when I was younger. But in 2012, I had this experience. My life was topsy-turvy and had a lot of things going on, was very unsure of what I was doing, had the career, lost it, along with a lot of other things. But this experience, I was just starting to kind of get back into a new way, I should say, getting back into a new way of looking at life. And I had this experience where I was just getting ready to go to sleep. And all of a sudden, there was this immense light in the room. And it wasn't light I could see, but it was light I could feel. And it immediately came over me. It brought me to tears. It felt like the most unconditional love that I've ever felt. I mean, I felt like this being understood me to a level that I couldn't explain. And I was able to communicate telepathically with this being, it was like wildfire questions in my mind to this being, and they were answering before I could even finish the question. And I'm bawling and not really sure what's going on, but I'm asking all the tough questions. Why did children get cancer? Why everything, all the tough questions. And I got answers to my satisfaction that helped me understand the world in a new way in those moments. I also, as the being was getting ready to leave, I could feel that essence, pulling. And I was like, no, I was grasping, don't go, because it felt so good to be seen in this way,
Yeah.
to be held in this way, to have this understanding. And it conveyed that it actually showed me an image of smoke coming from incense, the thick smoke. And it showed me this image, and then it asked me, how would you get more of this? And, I'm like, so I'm like, I don't have any idea what. So I was like a little kid, and I'm like this on the smoke, right? And of course, it just totally immediately, like, you know. And so the realization, the lesson was to not grasp, to just be. And that's to get the fullness of this experience with this being and with life. It was this larger message of, it's not about grasping at all. It's about allowing. And then it also conveyed that it was, that I wouldn't remember all the things that I had known in those moments. And point, it's that we are here to experience these things. It also, conveyed things like I'm part of a larger plan. My whole family is, everybody is, to some degree, I guess. And then, that it was profound. And then the other information that came through that I was able to remember was that it conveyed, it was a vibrational thing, that it had to reduce its vibration for it to be able to be with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had no idea at this point on my journey, this was about 2012, I had no idea what any of that, I didn't know about vibration, frequency, nothing like that. So as you can imagine, after this, and so what ended up, happening, I was in bliss with this being. Like, there was a sense of knowing and beauty, and just this new realization that there's a whole lot more going on here. And I remember that next morning waking up going, wow, did that really happen? And I'm like, yes, it did. I know it happened. And talked to my husband about it immediately, and family members. And I just knew intuitively it wasn't just for me, right? It was for me to, yes, wake up and grow, but it wasn't for me to keep to myself. And so, every time I feel called to share it, I do, because if it helps someone realize something, and like I was saying earlier, I had experiences not like this, but other profound experiences, like I knew something before it happened, those sorts of things before, but I'd always kind of shoot it, right? I didn't really allow it in my larger awareness, because I couldn't make sense of it, right? It didn't fit with my religion. It didn't fit with all these ways that I had been raised, and look around the world. It doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. Let's start now, right?
Yeah.
But it didn't fit then. And so
let me ask you something with that, because
yeah.
that's really fascinating to me. When I've had some similar experiences, I'll talk about it in my own time, but it strikes me, was there something that happened in your life at that moment that you felt like triggered that event, that brought it on? Was it part of a direct journey of trauma? What brought that on?
Well, there was certainly trauma before, and like I said, I was just starting to kind of get back into my body, I guess. There had been a lot of trauma. My dad had died. I had some self-sabotaging, and a lot of things was going on. And I was just coming back into, how can I live from a more comfortable place? Who am I really? Like, these questions were coming up. And right before, like literally right before this experience, I actually was in a huge place of gratitude, because I just realized all the blessings that were literally right before me. My husband was laying next to me in bed. My daughter was there, and she was like 11 or something, but she'd never slept in our bed, but she'd fallen asleep because we were playing around or something right before we went to bed. And I just had this profound realization, wow, what a gift. And this is the kind of stuff that I was not present to prior to all this turmoil. It was just kind of part of life, and I wasn't really engaging with life. I was just running, run, do, people please, this, that, whatever. This is where my life was before, this experience. And this experience really catapulted me, because I couldn't shake it. After it happened, I was like, that was something. And clearly
Can't
that
go back to
message, I can't ignore this. And but I was still very, very much broken. I mean, I still felt very not complete, because even though I knew all of this had happened, this experience had happened, and I believed it in some sense, I didn't actually believe it could be possible in another. And so I feel like I started this journey of, if that's true, then what does it mean about this? Or what does it mean about that? Right? I kept Like every time anything would come up, I'd have this anchor point that I could reconsider from. And
Mhm.
that's how my life has shifted. I believe that is one of the big points that happened at the divine perfect timing for me to be able to kind of shift everything. So,
Yeah, that's fascinating. One, I see that in a lot of ways. So what I want to do now, actually, let's back up a little bit because I think we went to this big shift in your life, but from what we've talked about earlier, there's a lot of things that led you to this point. And I know
yeah,
we each had those stories, right? We each come from something and until we reach that point, the shifting point.
yeah,
And like so let's go back to kind of your younger days for a minute
yeah.
and I know that's some maybe a little harder to talk about, I don't know. But
Well, it feels like almost like a past life. It really does.
yeah, talk about
And
somebody else now.
yeah, and yet it is me. I mean, I was there. I definitely remember. Grew up like I think a lot of people have grown up in a broken home. My parents were divorced. They divorced under circumstances where there was alcoholism and there was a separation between when my mom and dad first separated. I actually was not a huge fan of my mom. I was only 5, but my dad was, who I was more connected with. And I
Mhm.
remember, screaming at my mom when I was 5 years old, going, I don't want to live with you. I want to live with my dad. But my dad had done something very inappropriate. Um, and no, my mom was like, nope, you're staying with me. And she was emotionally unavailable. So there was no real explanation. You know, there was nothing, but I knew it was big, and I knew I wasn't being trusted with the information because I was little, and it was hard. And then fast forward till I was like 12. I was exactly 12, and my mom had moved us. Well, first of all, I went to like 30 different elementary schools because she couldn't sit still. She was very uncomfortable. And my mom was a genius, but she was also completely emotionally unavailable and socially awkward, right?
Mhm.
And so, we moved around a lot. I had a hard time making friends because what's the point, right? I'm just going to move again.
Mhm.
And then we moved out of state, had to give up our pets, which was a huge heartbreaker for me because my pets were my rock. I was very early on connected with animals, and because the humans around me weren't available, right? But the animals were. And so yeah, I was very sad, and then she committed suicide when I was 12, and it was just her and I. So that was when I had another experience, actually, or I had forgotten this experience until after I'd done some work after this divine experience that I just shared. I did some soul regression work and remembered that I was given the information when my mom died from my guides or whoever was there with me. There was like a parenting voice saying, "Yep," it was almost like matter of fact, like, "Yep, it's what is, and you've got your whole life ahead of you. Things are going to be changing for you, and this is just part of your journey." Like, it was very matter of fact and parenting. No, it was very just matter of fact. And
Mhm.
I do remember this now because yeah, I remember when the police came and everything to check in on me or something because my mom had left a note for
Mhm.
them. My daughter's by herself, whatever. They came to the house, and they were like, I opened the door and kind of stepped back, and they're like, do you know why we're here? And I'm like, yeah, you're here to tell me my mom died. And they're like, oh, you
Oh
know,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah, you knew
But
before they told you. Yeah.
yeah, but I realized, I've been guided every step of the way. I just haven't always listened. or haven't always remembered that I have that connection. So yeah, long story short, then I moved in with my dad, and who I was never really close to, and since he left or since they divorced. And yeah, and then I, became a troubled teen. and I kind of was a rebel, and I was in an abusive relationship when I was 16 until I was 19. And I got pregnant. I'd actually finally had all the courage to leave this person that had been abusing me. And then I found out I was pregnant. And so I went back, and of course, as the statistics say, it got, yeah, it got, and then I'll never forget, my daughter was about 7.5, 8 months old, and we were staying in a place. Anyway, she rolled off the bed because I didn't have the guard up, and we didn't have a crib for her and all that. And he picked her up and yelled at her. And I'm like, oh no, 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 no. And it made me realize this is not going to work. This is not going to work. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about this innocent little baby. And so I told him, I said, you got to go. This ain't going to work. And he proceeded to pull a gun on me. And I don't know how I actually got out of that, but somehow I did. And he left, and really only saw him one other time. And I was really thankful for that, because I didn't want to share my daughter with him. And then I met my husband, not long after that, within a year. And he adopted her. And then we've had 2 other children, and a wonderful relationship that I've tried to sabotage many times, actually, one way or the other, because I just couldn't believe that somebody could love me unconditionally. He's been a rock. So that's been pretty amazing.
That's a lot. Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. And that's a lot to share.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people need to hear those kind of things,
I know there's a lot of people, like I was interviewed for a book. I can't even remember the name of it now, but he told me it would be years, because it was like a research book about statistics of getting out of domestic violence type situations. And, he said I was an anomaly. And I was like, well, I had no choice. And I knew my daughter deserved better. I didn't have the self-worth back then for it to be about me, but I knew this baby was innocent, and there was none of that. So
I'm going to interject for a second. You did have a choice. You chose courage, is what you chose. Yes. And that's what I heard when you first told the story, is as you were describing it, I thought, okay, how was this for her is the question I asked myself a lot. Like, at every event in my life has served me in some way. And what I took from that, and I'd love to hear your viewpoint, is how it was for you, is it caused you to step into a new level of courage. You walked through some big time fear and came out the other side a stronger person.
Yep. Like a book I recently read, No, Not Here, Not Now, Not This. And that's what hit. It was like, no, not happening.
Yeah. And I wholeheartedly agree with what you said about the statistics. I actually worked a social work job. I worked in a domestic violence shelter for about 1.5 years. And the things I saw, and the stories that these women told themselves about why it was okay to keep going back and getting pulverized, and how hard it was for them to even get to the shelter in the first place, and then they would turn around and go back. And but it was like this trial by fire. Like they just finally had to get to a point of finding that courage, and some of them just don't ever do that. So that was a choice that you made. It was a huge choice.
It's amazing to me knowing you that I've had a chance to hang out with you, Mount Shasta, and spend some time, and the human that you are, so strong. And it's just these stories, I have plenty of these stories from my own family who've gone through similar things with spouses, suicide, and all kinds of different pieces. And it's so hard to hear sometimes because you know the pain they're in. You can understand what they walked through. But then to see where to see what's possible, to understand who we are, how capable we are, that as human beings, we can get out of these situations. And I'm so glad that you're willing to share the story first because it's huge for people it gives people strength. So
Yeah,
it can be done. You know?
it can be. And I'm thankful every day. I really am. Um, yeah, and it's through other sages and stories, that has lifted me up to know that it can be, in sometimes it's like stepping, not knowing if there's going to be anything there to catch me. That when I
David and I were just having that conversation earlier today.
Yeah,
yeah,
they're
yeah,
both giggling. We barely were saying that. Just
trusting without knowing there's a net, and
yeah. Sometimes you have to jump off the cliff just hoping something's there, It's like
yeah,
it's like I think there's a movie with Eddie Murphy, there's a bottom down there, there's a way out. Like how I can do this. It's hard to see sometimes.
So you shared earlier about the divine encounter with the person that, spoke to you telepathically, and that you had kind of reached, correct me if this is the wrong language, kind of a rock bottom place, and then you were slowly creeping your way out of like, okay, I have to find a new normal, is what I would call it from my own experience. Um, and and then you mentioned that after you had this experience, you woke up and you understood that these things were meant to be shared, but you also still felt very broken. So can you share more what you're comfortable to share,
yeah,
and maybe even a little uncomfortable to share about
yeah.
what that journey looked like in order to get, you know, obviously you've made some headway since then. Um,
Thank
Yeah. How you climbed that mountain, if you will.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, who am I to have had this experience? I'm just a person that has made a lot of mistakes. And so it was a big shift to realize that I'm here to be that vessel. And so it's like inching, right? I felt very broken in that. I couldn't picture what it would be to embody the knowledge that I was given a glimpse of.
Feel that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a level of
I feel like I've
acceptance,
been
right?
fighting my own demons since then, right? Like, and still, right? Because they still
Yeah.
come up.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah.
Accepting your worth, I feel like is very related to this.
And I hear that little voice, like, who are you? Some righteous bitch? Like, who are you?
Yeah.
And yeah, coming
Like
in,
to lie to us, don't they?
yeah, yeah,
Voices.
and keep us small, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, I just started recognizing, thankfully, with power positive thinking, Louise Hay, all these different beautiful resources that are out there that I could rewire and retrain the way I interpret data that's here, and so I did. I started doing the work, writing my affirmations, feeling into them. Once I learned about the power of emotion and how that's really the prayer, um, yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And I immediately started feeling better and recognizing that negative little voice within as something that could be there and not necessarily something I have to act on.
Yeah. That's really deep.
Recognizing it wasn't who you are, in other words, like
Right. It's
you just
just,
observe it.
yeah, like the program that's running.
Yeah.
I love that you said the power of emotions. To me, that's what hit me really strongly. I mean, I've always been an emotional kind of guy. You can tell me if you're crying, this is your story, because it's so related to, so many of my own experiences, for one. But that emotion really is the prayer, that's the power behind the direction, and if we're leaning into these fear emotions, then we head in fearful paths.
Yeah.
And when we change that emotion, we change our direction. And that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That phrase stood out for me as well, and it brought me back to an earlier part of your story where you were sharing about this being that came to visit you, and when you found yourself trying to grasp for more of that, and they gave the example of the smoke, and it reminded me of a story that I read, written by Elizabeth Gilbert in I think it was in Eat, Pray, Love, perhaps. But anyway, yeah, that sounds right. She was at this ashram and doing all this spiritual work, and she kept running up against a wall as far as meditation because uh, she was fighting with her emotions. Instead of flowing with them, she was like, "But I'm supposed to not have all these thoughts happening, right?" And she ended up having an encounter with a yogi, I believe. Anyway, some kind of guru, and in a dream, and he had her stand before the ocean, and he said, "I want you to hold back the waves." And she's frantically like trying to pile up the sand and doing anything she can to keep these waves from coming at her. And he starts laughing hysterically, like she's ridiculous, which she was being ridiculous. You're not going to beat the ocean. It doesn't work. And eventually she's like, "I can't do it." And he said, "That's exactly right. You can't do it. You're trying to fight something you're not meant to fight. Let it go. Just flow with it." And I often think of emotions in terms of like water. I see that as the element related to that part of us. And it very much is like trying to fight the ocean. Those thoughts are going to happen. It's just how much are you going to buy in? Like, "Oh, I hear you. That's nice."
Yeah, it was a huge lesson that I'm still embodying, right? Because I remember at this stage of my life, and for even a few years after this experience, because I'm hard-headed and it takes a while for me to add it all up, but I remember feeling like it was my duty to let other people know things that I thought was important, right? And or especially my kids, right? I have adult children, and I've done a lot of research, and so I want to keep them safe, and it was always so uncomfortable because they didn't want to hear it. They weren't ready. They didn't want to hear it, and I remember when I made that realization, oh, I'm grasping in that I'm trying to force this information. And once I realized that, there was so much more peace. Oh my gosh, I'm so much more peaceful because I realized, oh, if they want to know, they know they can come to me.
Right.
That's all I need to do.
Yeah.
Just put it out there. And I have trust. And I also now understand on a broader scale that we each signed up for our individual, experience.
That thought was going through my mind as well. And about that also.
And by
having
trying
adult kids very much brings that into your awareness. Like, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, gladly pick a toddler again.
Yeah, by trying to, save them, I'm actually hurting them.
Yes.
And I realized that too. And I'm like, oh, it doesn't
I had
make sense.
that thought when I was going through my own kind of moment of awakening, if you'll call it that. Was like, why could I have done this earlier? Like, my kids could have had such a better life if I would have known myself, but we didn't. We had to go through to find ourselves.
Yes.
It was part of that path,
Well, that was how I felt, not even about the spiritual aspect of awakening, but the awakening to the corruption, right? People got to know about this stuff, right? Like, I mean, because I went on the deep dive, I found all the dirt, and I'm like, I got to know about this. And then I realized, wait a minute, I'm here to create the new,
right?
not talk about the old. And so that became peaceful too. In fact, I find a lot of people still want to talk about it. And I'm like, I'm over it. I'm over here.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm writing a new story over here. Coming to a new book. The old book is
feel
over
that.
there burning. It's on fire on the other place. I'm not worried about it.
I
Yeah.
did a similar thing, Harmony, with, going down that rabbit hole of figuring out things about the food systems and realizing, oh my gosh, I gotta go fix everybody, same thing with my kids, and have come to a point where I recognize there are no mistakes, there's learning opportunities, and there's chances for us to, at any moment and every moment, chances for us to make choices. Which choice do we want to make? And there's no wrong ones. There's no wrong ones. And in the words of a friend who's running a book study that all three of us have participated in, he said, you can't fuck it up. You can't. Like, you can't get it wrong. And that's huge to me. Like, I'm not just trying to be, bold in your face with that statement, but like, literally, when you recognize that, it's that level of peace that you're talking about. Like, I don't have to fix anybody. I don't have to save the world. I'm here to have an experience, and the one that draws me is the right one for me. And the same for everybody else.
Like they say, you can only do what you know, and if you don't know, you can't do. And you can't share that kind of knowledge. It's not like the movie Paul, just can't touch them on the forehead and give them information. You can't change your children because you learned something. Just like we couldn't be changed, no matter who the hell told us, until we eventually hit our head on the right rock and we woke up from our own slumber. Yeah, and I totally feel that exact way. I completely see that. And it's hard. It's a hard one to swallow because you hear it and you're like, but you need to know.
Right.
It's like, this is
But
important.
what I did learn is that, I can't fuck it up. And yet, how I decide determines the trajectory, right? Like, because I have certainly fucked up. And yet it's not really, because it leads me back to a higher understanding, to more of a knowing.
Right.
And now I feel like I'm at a place where I'm certainly still making mistakes. However, I'm recognizing that I can flow with those more. It's not so jagged, right?
I would have to reject that a little bit and say those mistakes are just, you're still learning lessons.
Yes,
You're
right.
not really making mistakes. You're learning lessons because no matter what, everything could be seen as a mistake, but every mistake is closer to not doing that again. It's to the lesson being learned from that action. That's one thing that hit me really hard was looking at my past. I judged myself severely most of my life. And I thought, I'm just going to go to hell anyway, so it doesn't matter. At one point, I just kind of given up. But when I kind of came out of this and realized everything that happened in my life was what led me to who I am now. And when I finally realized I liked myself, and I'm like, wait a damn minute. Those weren't mistakes. They had to happen. I couldn't go back. Well, if I wouldn't have done that thing, I wouldn't have learned this thing.
Yeah.
So it's yeah, anyway.
I'm going to interject with a couple things. The reason why we chose the lotus flower and the phoenix rising is based on what you just described, basically, of understanding that it's all part of the growth process, that we built this beautiful person that we are based on every truth that passed by us that we resonated with. Whether we want to call that right or wrong, it's all, as you're being shared with you, it's all part of the story, and it's all a necessary part of the story. And I would also add, I too often find myself saying we're here to learn lessons, but in actuality, we're remembering is what we're doing. We don't have to learn anything. We're having an experience is what we're remembering. Yeah.
I truly feel like that this is an experience to see how far we can get from who we really are to remembering who we really are. Like, it really feels like that.
Yeah.
Especially
I'm
when
always torn. I'm always torn of that thought process. It always throws me, right? You always think, I was raised religiously too, right? And the idea that God knows everything, well, then what's the point of what we're doing? Kind of, it always threw me, right? And then I spin back and forth from we already know everything, we just have to remember what we know, to something about this experience is beneficial for the all, is that every experience is part of a larger lesson that goes into the collective understanding. And then, it's like, I don't think if someone sees God as some exterior being to self, I wouldn't think that being would be static. That's boring as hell.
Mm-hmm.
And I would think that all experiences go into the greater experiences of the one mind of all of us. And so in some way, yeah, we're remembering, but in some way our experiences also have value to the greater whole. In everything we do, including these ages we walk through, the everything evolutionary ages that we've built, including technology, it's for a purpose. Without purpose, there is nothing. In my personal opinion, I can't see that as, there has to be a reason behind life, because it's
Right.
too complicated and beautiful for it just to magically appear for no reason. It's purposeful. It's meant to be.
There's no doubt,
Yeah.
especially with what we're understanding now with, you know, energy and the beautiful shapes and, the geometry of it. And
Yeah.
the reality that we can't go wrong in that, like what you were saying, we are eternal beings in essence,
Yeah.
and we can't be harmed. And so we are allowed to make these decisions, right?
Hmm.
Because we've either agreed to it on some level prior to, incarnating this time, or I'm not exactly sure how it works, but I do know that we don't know tall without short. And
Right.
so for every aspect, there's the opposite. And we're each playing our part in those things. And,
Yeah.
so there's no judgment because it is what it is. But we're
Yeah.
all going to be okay. We already are.
We're already okay because time doesn't exist anyways. It's
Right.
like there is no light without the dark, like,
Yeah,
you see Hitler, you see all these people and go, boy, if that person didn't happen. But to some degree, those things had to happen.
they
It's like
definitely,
for every hero, there's
or
also a
whatever.
villain.
Yeah,
There are no heroes without villains. What's the point of a hero? There's no light without dark. Otherwise, you wouldn't know you're in the light because you wouldn't have nothing to compare it to.
yeah.
So
And
coming back around to your own story, Harmony, you shared how you started working through some things and soul regressions and neural retraining and those kinds of things. Was there a point during all of that retraining and positive thinking and all of that you did where you recognized some moment that you had thought, oh my goodness, this was just the worst crushing thing in my life, and now I see it as absolutely beneficial to me in some way? Did you have a
Yes,
turning point like that?
yes. That was when I very much sabotaged my life. It was shortly after my dad died, and I had just kind of come to the realization that I had everything in my life that I thought I wanted, and I wasn't happy, and I couldn't understand why. And so I started sabotaging my life, I guess, to feel alive and to kind of awaken something within me. And yeah, yeah, I definitely had that, especially after the experience with the divine being. I realized that those experiences led me to the path that I'm on now. And had I not had those, I wouldn't have been distraught enough to want more.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you say want more,
To know that there was more, so when I realized I wasn't happy and I had everything I thought I needed, I was confused and didn't didn't really know who I was. Right? Like, especially after I did these things, like I had it all. I had the great job. I had the husband and the kids and the soccer and all of it. And I
Mhm.
I wasn't fulfilled. I didn't feel fulfilled. And so I started digging into places that didn't make sense for who I am. And I knew it. It's like, what am I doing? And I realized that those things is what made me really reframe and wake up. Because had I just been going about life like usual and not digging into this darker side, I wouldn't have been able to know who I was, right?
Yeah.
I learned who I wasn't
Right.
by the experience of those things. It's like, that's not who I am. And yet I still did those things. So what does that mean? And I realized it was a reflection for me to really know that wasn't who I am. That's not who I am.
Seems to me like it's very preparatory for your future.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, each of those are
And have
still, you have
passion
a very
for the
solid purpose.
mistakes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it helps define
Well,
well, like I said, whether we call them mistakes or not, I know certain things in my life that I did that I definitely, a lot of people would call mistakes. My, church I'd gone to certainly would have, but without them, I couldn't be who I am. And I know that's with you too. Like we learn these things so that we can fulfill the purpose we're here for. And sometimes the only way to fulfill that purpose is to go through hell. I tell my mom all the time, she's very religious, but tell her the only way to make angels is to go through hell. Because unless you go through hell, you have no empathy for anybody else. But when you go through hell, you can actually come out the other side and say, oh, angels aren't just made by being good. Angels are made from the hellions because all the things that they make mistakes and they do all the things and they have all the empathy and they have all the tears and they break all the rules because they can't judge anybody then. There's nothing left to judge. I understand. Who am I to judge? I have judged myself my whole life. I'm sorry to take over here. I just feel
no,
I
it's
feel very
yeah.
much with what you said, and I see your purpose from the outsider's point of view. That this great purpose, and I started to see that more and more in the people I meet. Is this is the time of purpose? We're here for a purpose. We, like you said, we incarnated in this time for a reason, and we're changing things, and we're a part of a bigger thing outside of our own little worlds that we think we live in. All the hell we went through was to prepare us for what we can do and to show us, look, you can do anything.
Mhm.
So do it. Yeah.
So on that note, tell us more about what Harmony 2.0, if you will, looks like
Yeah.
these days. What are you
Yeah.
passionate
What is tomorrow for you, Harmony?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I am definitely passionate about people being comfortable in their skin, right? Knowing this deeper truth of who we really are, that we don't ever actually die, that there's this essence within us that is truly forever. That shifted a lot for me once I really took on that understanding. And, there's many aspects of this new way of being, but that's one of them. And I feel for the people that are ready to hear these things, I mean, there's so many that are awakening now. I'm just part of the chorus, right? Of there's a new way, there's another way. And in 2020, I started traveling. I felt very called to visit intentional communities because I just knew that we're not going to be living in all these tiny little houses with everybody having their own chainsaw and everybody having their own everything. It doesn't work. It's not in alignment with the earth. It's not in alignment.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew intuitively to go and research this, and I still am. I mean, I look at whatever ones that come across my path. I know that this is where we're going. So I know that that's one thing I'm passionate about, is creating spaces
Mm-hmm.
people can remember who they are, really are, as an eternal essence, and practicing ways that we can feel comfortable with that, right? Through whatever comes up, dance, ritual, ceremony, eating. I love food and I love to share good food. That's, part of our shared journey is the awakening of the corrupt food system and how we can still live our lives and not succumb to, the harmful things that are out there. And ultimately to raise the vibration of the collective consciousness and to have more fun, right? Because so much of my life has been so serious. And I recognize now that it doesn't need to be, because again, I'm here on purpose. There's a larger thing going on. There's nothing to be afraid of anymore. There's nothing to be afraid of. And so with that freedom becomes the desire to be more childlike. And so I want to do that with as many people that feel called to do that as well. And so that's my calling as far as, right now, is to gather with others that know this, or at least are starting to remember this. Yeah. And give us that space holder to be that new version.
I love it.
Yeah. And I'm still figuring out what that looks like. I mean, Harmony is not my given name by my birth certificate, but it's a name that I adopted in 2021 because I started learning about the power of words and the power of my thoughts and the power of, how words can direct our thoughts. And I'm like, well, I want to be referred to as something that reminds me of what I'm here to do or to be. And so Harmony just made sense because I love music and it's part of that, right? And the reminder every time I hear it, it's like I should be dancing, or I can be dancing, right? It's an option, right? It was never an option for the first 3/4 of my life. It wasn't mentally an option. And now it is. And I want to be reminded of that. And I don't want to forget again. And I don't think I will, but certainly I'm not sure of all the life experiences yet to come. But I want to set myself up with as many systems and structures that are in alignment with harmony that I can.
I love how it says on the bottom, harmony of new earth, because you're creating harmony for the new earth.
Yeah.
That too. I just remembered something I hadn't thought about in a long while. I'll share this little snippet of my own story because it ties in really well with your description of your name choice. When I had hit a point like what you described yourself, where you had hit rock bottom and you were starting to climb up and realizing like, I got to find the new normal. And I was in that zone, and I had finally decided, okay, I'm going to come up with a name for what I have previously referred to as God, but it has to be a whole different name because that one has too much baggage with it. And I played around for a while with different ideas, and the one that I settled on for a long while was Harmony, because again, it felt very, I'm also very musical, and it felt like we're all part of a symphony. And I had actually seen a video created by the guy who wrote Love Wins. I don't remember his name right now. And it was just this little snippet. It was basically describing that we're all part of this symphony, but he didn't describe it in the way I now understand it, on a much deeper vibrational level. But even as, we're all kind of in the band playing our part, and that really spoke to me. And I didn't understand entirely yet how much it would eventually speak to me. But I love that you chose it based on that. I have one more question. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the resonance, right? I've learned about the the sound waves and how it can be all very chaotic until you let it do what it's going to do, and then it turns into this beautiful mandala or this beautiful shape. And
Mhm.
like right now, that's where I feel like a lot of us are at, you know, as far as a collective, is this in this chaotic state, and yet it's turning into something very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
Like I say, I'm here to go there and to create those spaces, not to dwell over here anymore, right?
Yeah.
So
Right.
definitely making that purposeful decision, that intention that this is where we're going.
I see that we're finding harmony as a collective. We're
Yeah.
finally finding harmony.
Yeah.
And coming
That
into
ties in really well with the last question I want to ask before we wrap this up, because it's I don't want to go too long. So just like with Natalie, the last thing I really asked her was if you could be talking right now to some former version of yourself who's still struggling with some kind of, oh my God, life is really rough right now, what would you say to that person?
gift would you give her?
There's something that I've hung on to for a long time, and I suppose this came from religion, but it still fits. And it's the phrase, "This too shall pass." Like I remember thinking that literally when the gun was in my head, like this too shall pass. To some degree, that came across my mind. And I was still alive, and you know, I was still alive, so I was still talking. And wherever we're at, this too shall pass. The good and the bad, right? Whatever we want to call it.
Yeah,
Everything is
it
temporary.
all shall pass.
Yeah, it's all just a little bite of where we're at, but it's making the beautiful palette that makes up our story, that makes up our life, that makes up our art of our being here. So that may or may not be helpful for some, but for me, it has been just kind of something that I can go to when I recognize I'm in a tough place. It's just
Mhm.
that this is temporary. And yeah, I can grieve, or yeah, I can be in rage or whatever it is that doesn't feel good, but it's gonna pass.
Thank you so much, Charmin. This has been a wonderful conversation, and I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
you
you
so
very much.
much for sharing your honest, pure self. And it's a lot, and I appreciate it so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
it's so needed in this world. More and more of this kind of conversation.
And thank you so much for following your heart and doing this foundation and providing a place to bring science and spirituality together. It's hugely important, because I know for me, I needed that. I needed that. That was part of my stepping into what I was given a glimpse of in the divine
Yeah,
experience, was how can this be? Where's the proof? Where's the science?
right.
So for me, it was huge. And this, I feel like, is a platform that a lot of people need.
Thank you. And I knew as soon as this looked out to me, I couldn't do this alone. It wasn't just me. There's never been the Dave show. I had to find people like yourself, like Kim, like many of the people, like all of the girls that we were with in Mount Shasta, many others I met. Like we're all on this together.
Yeah.
And it's time that we all kind of are opening our eyes to this and understanding that science and spirit are not different. They're
We're
just one understanding.
hands, right, that are creating this beautiful mandala. We are the same.
Right. We're the artists, we're the composers, we're the song and the composer. We're all of the thing. With all that said, we should go ahead and stop the recording, but it's been wonderful. Thank you all so much.